My name is Samantha Walker, and 2 weeks ago, I watched my sister Vanessa frantically clear her desk, avoiding eye contact with everyone as she carried her personal items in a cardboard box through the executive floor of Walker Innovations, the company I had just acquired. The same sister who, 3 years earlier, had deliberately cropped me out of every single one of her wedding photos because I didn't fit the aesthetic. If you've ever felt the sting of family betrayal, leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button to join me on this journey of how karma eventually comes full circle. Growing up in the affluent suburbs of Boston, Vanessa was always our parents' golden child. 2 years older than me, she embodied everything they valued: conventional beauty, social grace, and an unwavering commitment to maintaining appearances. While Vanessa was captain of the cheerleading squad, homecoming queen, and president of student council, I was the awkward younger sister with glasses too big for my face, and an uncomfortable obsession with computers and coding that my parents dismissed as just a phase. Our childhood home showcased the disparity in my parents' affection. The hallway walls were adorned with professional photographs of Vanessa's dance recitals, sports victories, and academic achievements. My accomplishments, winning the state science fair 3 years running or developing my first app at 16, were relegated to a small corner shelf in the living room, displayed more as an afterthought than a celebration. Not everyone can be photogenic, my mother would say whenever I questioned the imbalance, her tone suggesting this was somehow my fault rather than her deliberate choice. My father, Richard Walker, ran a mid-sized marketing firm that had been in the family for 2 generations. From early childhood, it was made clear that Vanessa would someday take over the business, despite showing little interest in how it actually operated. I, on the other hand, spent summers interning at tech startups, learning everything I could about business operations, digital marketing, and software development. When I suggested implementing new technologies to modernize my father's increasingly outdated business model, he patted my head and said, "That's cute, Sam, but leave the real business decisions to people who understand our clients." People like Vanessa, he meant, who had majored in communications and spent more time networking at cocktail parties than learning about industry innovations. The wedding photo incident, though seemingly small in the grand scheme of things, represented the culmination of years of being treated as an afterthought in my own family. Vanessa had gotten engaged to Bradley Thompson, the son of one of my father's biggest clients. The Thompson-Walker wedding quickly became the social event of the season, with my parents sparing no expense to ensure it reflected their status in the community. As the maid of honor, a role I suspected Vanessa only offered because tradition demanded it, I dutifully helped with wedding preparations, offered emotional support during planning meltdowns, and even coded a custom wedding website that received compliments from all the guests. Throughout the process, Vanessa repeatedly emphasized how important the wedding aesthetic was to her. "Everything needs to be perfect," she insisted during one particularly tense cake tasting. "The photos will be in our family for generations." The day of the wedding arrived, a lavish affair at the Boston Harbor Hotel with over 300 guests. I wore the bridesmaid dress Vanessa had selected, an unflattering pale yellow gown that seemed deliberately chosen to make me look washed out beside her other friends, who wore a more complimentary shade. Still, I smiled through the ceremony, gave a heartfelt toast at the reception, and did everything expected of a supportive sister. It wasn't until 2 months later, when the professional wedding photos were shared in the family group chat, that I discovered I had been systematically erased. In group shots, I had been positioned on the edge, making it easy to crop me out entirely. In family portraits, I was noticeably absent, apparently asked to step aside for immediate family-only shots that somehow included distant cousins but not me. Even in candid reception photos, I was nowhere to be seen, as if the photographer had been specifically instructed to avoid capturing me on film. When I confronted Vanessa about the omission, her response cut deeper than I could have anticipated. "The photographer had a limited number of shots in the package," she explained dismissively. "We had to prioritize the people who matched our wedding aesthetic. Your outfit and, well, you know how you look in photos. It just wasn't working with our vision." "My outfit? The dress you specifically chose for me to wear?" I asked, stunned by the transparent lie. "Don't make this about you, Sam," she sighed, exasperated. "It was my special day, and I wanted the photos to be perfect. Besides, Mom and Dad agreed with me." That revelation, that my parents had not only known about but endorsed my exclusion, was the final straw. That evening, after a tearful drive home, I made a decision that would alter the course of my life. I would no longer seek validation from a family determined not to give it. Instead, I would channel my energy into creating a future where I couldn't be cropped out or dismissed. At 26, I already had a successful career as a software developer at a growing tech company, but I knew I was capable of more. I had been developing a customer engagement platform on the side, a sophisticated AI-driven system that could revolutionize how businesses interact with their clients online. The prototype was promising, but I had hesitated to fully commit to it, partly due to my father's dismissive attitude toward my technical abilities. The morning after discovering the wedding photo betrayal, I submitted my resignation letter and withdrew my entire savings to found Walker Tech Solutions. The name was deliberate, a reminder of the legacy I would build on my own terms. The first year was brutal, working 18-hour days from my small apartment, subsisting on ramen noodles and determination. I secured a small angel investment that allowed me to hire 2 other developers, and together we refined the platform until it was ready for market. Our breakthrough came when a major e-commerce company implemented our solution and saw a 40% increase in customer retention within 3 months. Suddenly, investors were calling, and tech publications were featuring our revolutionary approach to customer engagement. Within 2 years, Walker Tech Solutions had grown from 3 people in my apartment to a team of 50 in a downtown office, with clients across North America and Europe. Throughout this period, my relationship with my family became increasingly distant. I declined Sunday dinners, missed holiday gatherings, and responded to family group chats with brief, non-committal messages. My parents, noticing my growing success through social media and occasional news mentions, began making overtures. My mother sending congratulatory texts that always included reminders about family events I was missing. My father suddenly interested in catching up over lunch to discuss business opportunities. Vanessa, meanwhile, had taken her expected place at our father's company after a brief stint at a PR firm. According to industry gossip, which I now had access to through my expanding professional network, Walker Marketing was struggling to retain clients in the digital age. Their outdated approaches were losing ground to more innovative competitors, exactly as I had predicted years earlier. I maintained polite but distant contact, always too busy with urgent work matters to engage meaningfully. In truth, I was building something they couldn't ignore or diminish. My revenge wouldn't come through confrontation, but through undeniable success. The opportunity I hadn't anticipated arrived in my email on a Tuesday morning, 3 years after the wedding photo incident. The subject line read simply, "Confidential, Acquisition Opportunity, Walker Marketing Group." The email was from a business broker representing a company looking to divest certain assets due to financial difficulties. Among those assets was my father's marketing firm. My heart raced as I read the details. Walker Marketing Group, the family business my father had always intended for Vanessa, was being quietly shopped to potential buyers. They weren't just struggling, they were on the verge of collapse, with declining revenues, outdated systems, and a client list that had shrunk by nearly 60% over the past 2 years. I forwarded the email to my CFO with a single question: "Is this viable?" His response came back within hours, along with a preliminary valuation and acquisition strategy. Walker Marketing was worth a fraction of what it had been when I was that teenager offering unwanted suggestions for modernization. Now, with Walker Tech's resources and technology, we could acquire the firm, integrate their remaining client relationships, and essentially absorb my father's legacy into the company he had never believed I could build. The decision wasn't purely emotional, though satisfaction certainly factored into my considerations. Walker Marketing still had valuable client relationships and an established brand in traditional marketing circles that could complement our digital focus. The acquisition made strategic sense, allowing us to offer more comprehensive services to our existing clients while expanding into new markets. I instructed my CFO to pursue the acquisition through a holding company, keeping my personal involvement concealed for the time being. The negotiations were handled by our corporate development team, with the broker unaware that the daughter of the company's founder was behind the offer. We submitted a fair but firm proposal, enough to clear the company's debts but well below what my father would have considered adequate for his life's work. 2 weeks of tense negotiations followed. I maintained my distance, receiving updates from my team but never directly involving myself in the discussions. Finally, the call came. Walker Marketing Group had accepted our offer. The company my grandfather had founded, that my father had grown, and that Vanessa was supposed to inherit would now be mine. The acquisition agreement included a standard clause requiring key personnel to remain for a transition period of at least 3 months. This meant my father, Vanessa, and the executive team would report directly to Walker Tech's management, ultimately to me, during the integration phase. Only after signing did they learn the identity of their company's new owner. I deliberately scheduled the post-acquisition announcement for a Monday morning. My executive team and I arrived at Walker Marketing's offices at precisely 9:12 a.m., entering the dated building that housed the company I had been told countless times I would never understand. The receptionist, not recognizing me, asked if we had an appointment. "No appointment necessary," I replied calmly. "I'm Samantha Walker, CEO of Walker Tech Solutions. As of this morning, we own this company." Her eyes widened as she hurriedly called my father's office. Within minutes, we were escorted to the conference room where the entire Walker Marketing executive team, including my father and Vanessa, had been assembled for what they thought was an emergency meeting about the company's sale. The shock on their faces as I walked in, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that projected confidence and authority, was everything I had imagined and more. My father half rose from his chair, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally, the dawning realization of what had happened. "Samantha, what is this about?" he managed, his voice lacking its usual certainty. "Good morning, everyone," I began, addressing the room while my executive team distributed folders containing the integration plan. "For those who don't know me, I'm Samantha Walker, founder and CEO of Walker Tech Solutions. As of 9 o'clock this morning, we have completed the acquisition of Walker Marketing Group." The room erupted in murmurs and shocked glances. Vanessa stared at me, her perfectly manicured hand frozen midair where she'd been reaching for her water glass. "This is absurd," my father interrupted. "There must be some mistake. Walker Marketing isn't for sale." My CFO smoothly interjected, "Actually, Mr. Walker, the sale was finalized this morning. Your signature is on the final agreement." He slid a copy across the table. "Your broker represented that you had full authority to execute the transaction." My father glanced down at the document, then back at me, his face flushing. "You were behind this, my own daughter?" "It was a straightforward business acquisition," I replied evenly. "Walker Marketing offers certain synergies with our existing operations. The purchase made strategic sense." I paused, then added, "Though I admit the irony isn't lost on me." For the next hour, my team outlined the integration plan, which departments would merge, which products would be phased out, and most importantly, the new reporting structure. Walker Marketing would become a division of Walker Tech, with all executives reporting to my COO. My father would transition to an advisory role with no operational authority, while other staff would be evaluated for fit within the new organization. Throughout the presentation, Vanessa sat rigid in her chair, her expression shifting between shock, anger, and something that looked remarkably like fear. As VP of Client Relations, she would now report to our head of customer success, a position that would require actual metrics and results, rather than the relationship-based approach she had relied on. When the formal presentation concluded and my team began individual breakout sessions with department heads, I finally addressed my father and sister directly. "Dad, Vanessa, perhaps we should speak privately in your office," I suggested, my tone professional but firm. My father's office, once so intimidating to me, now seemed small and outdated. Family photos lined the credenza behind his desk, numerous pictures of him with Vanessa at client events, charity galas, and yes, her wedding, none with me. "How could you do this?" Vanessa demanded once the door closed behind us. "Your own family? Was this your plan all along?" I regarded her calmly. "No, Vanessa. My plan was to build a successful company based on innovation and actual value, something this firm stopped prioritizing years ago. The opportunity to acquire Walker Marketing came to me through a broker. The company was already for sale before I knew about it." "That's not possible," my father interjected. "I never authorized." "The board voted 3 months ago to explore strategic options, including sale," I interrupted, referencing information from the due diligence process. "The company has lost 60% of its client base over the past 3 years. You're operating at a significant loss, and your line of credit is maxed out. The board had a fiduciary duty to consider all options." My father sank into his chair, suddenly looking older than his 62 years. "So this is revenge, then? For what? Not giving you enough attention growing up?" The dismissiveness in his tone, so familiar from my childhood, no longer had the power to hurt me. "This is business, Dad. Walker Marketing is failing because it refused to evolve. Walker Tech is succeeding because we embrace change." I paused, then added, "Though I won't pretend there isn't a certain satisfaction in the situation." Vanessa, always quicker to anger than our father, stood abruptly. "You can't just walk in here and take over. I've worked in this company for years. I have relationships with these clients, relationships that haven't prevented the mass exodus of those same clients," I pointed out. "But you're welcome to continue working here during the transition period. After that, your position will be evaluated like everyone else's." You'd fire your own sister? She asked incredulously. I'd retain or release employees based on their performance and fit with our corporate culture, I corrected. Family connections won't be a factor in those decisions, something I think you can appreciate, given your own history of family prioritization. The reference to the wedding photos wasn't lost on either of them. My father looked away uncomfortably while Vanessa's cheeks flushed. That was different, she muttered. That was just photos, and this is just business, I replied. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have an integration to oversee. The weeks that followed were intensely satisfying in ways I hadn't fully anticipated. My team implemented the changes we had planned, modernizing Walker Marketing's operations, and introducing our proprietary technology to their remaining clients. Many of the staff embraced the changes enthusiastically, particularly younger employees who had been frustrated by the company's resistance to innovation. My father, after his initial shock, retreated into a sullen acceptance of his new advisory role. He rarely left his office, delegating most interactions with the Walker Tech team to his subordinates. When we did speak, our conversations were stiffly professional, centered around specific transition issues rather than our personal history. Vanessa, surprisingly, took a different approach. After a week of obvious resentment, arriving late to meetings, making passive-aggressive comments, and generally radiating hostility, she abruptly shifted tactics. She began arriving early, staying late, and making visible efforts to learn our systems and processes. In team meetings, she contributed thoughtful questions and even occasional insights that demonstrated she was paying attention. I observed this transformation with cautious skepticism. Was this genuine professional growth or another performance designed to secure her position? I instructed our head of customer success to monitor her work closely and provide detailed assessments of her actual contributions. The 3-month transition period neared its end, and the time came for final decisions about which Walker Marketing employees would be retained in the new organization. My executive team presented their recommendations, and I reviewed each case carefully, determined that every decision would be defensible on merit alone. When I reached Vanessa's file, I wasn't surprised by the mixed evaluation. She had made genuine efforts to adapt but still struggled with the data-driven approach our company valued. Her client relationship skills were strong, but her technical understanding remained limited. I called her into my office on a Friday afternoon, the last day of the transition period. She entered with uncharacteristic hesitation, her usual confidence replaced by visible anxiety. "Please sit down, Vanessa," I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. She complied, smoothing her skirt nervously. "Is this about my position going forward?" "Yes," I confirmed. "I've been reviewing the evaluations from the transition period. I know I had a rough start," she said quickly, "but I've been working really hard to learn the new systems. I'm sure given a little more time," I held up a hand to pause her. "I'm aware of your efforts. They haven't gone unnoticed." I opened the file on my desk. "However, there are still significant gaps in your technical proficiency that would normally disqualify you for a senior position in our organization." Her face fell, but she nodded with unexpected dignity. "I understand. I appreciate you being straightforward. That said," I continued, "you've demonstrated an unexpected willingness to adapt and learn. Your client relationship skills are valuable, particularly with some of the traditional clients we hope to retain." Hope flickered across her features. So I'm offering you a position as an associate client success manager," I said. "It's more junior than your previous role, with compensation adjusted accordingly. You would report to Melissa Chen and undergo intensive training in our methodologies and systems." Relief washed over her face, quickly followed by a hint of her old pride. "An associate position? After 5 years as a VP? A VP at a failing company versus an associate at one of the fastest-growing tech firms in the country," I clarified. "The choice is yours, of course. We can arrange a generous severance package instead if you prefer." She considered this for a long moment, then straightened her shoulders. "I'll take the position." "Good. You'll start on Monday." I closed her file and was about to dismiss her when she spoke again. Samantha," she corrected herself. "I need to say something about the wedding photos and everything else." I leaned back in my chair, genuinely curious. "Go ahead." "I was wrong," she said simply. "About the photos. About how I treated you. I always thought." She paused, searching for words. "I always thought you had it easier, somehow. You didn't seem to care about the things I was killing myself to achieve. Mom and Dad's approval, social status, all of it. You just did your own thing, and I was jealous, I guess." The admission surprised me. Vanessa had never struck me as someone capable of such self-reflection. "The wedding was supposed to be perfect," she continued. "And somewhere in my twisted thinking, that meant erasing anything that didn't fit my imagined ideal. including my own sister. She met my eyes directly. It was cruel and stupid, and I'm sorry. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or insincerity, but found none. Thank you for saying that, I said finally. It doesn't change the past, but I appreciate the acknowledgement. I don't expect us to suddenly be best friends, she added, but I hope maybe we can build something new, something better than before. That would depend on whether this new self-awareness lasts beyond your immediate need for employment, I observed. She flinched but nodded. Fair enough. I guess I'll have to prove it over time. As she stood to leave, I made a decision. Opening my desk drawer, I removed a small package I'd been keeping there for several weeks. Here, I said, handing it to her. I was going to mail this to your home, but since you're here. Vanessa unwrapped the package with curious fingers, then stared at the contents in confusion. It was a framed wedding photo, one she had never seen because it hadn't come from her photographer. It showed her in her wedding dress, radiant and laughing, with me beside her in that unflattering yellow bridesmaid gown, both of us caught in a moment of genuine sisterly affection before the ceremony. Where did this come from? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. One of your guests sent it to me afterward. They didn't know about the situation. They just thought I'd like to have a nice photo with my sister. Tears welled in her eyes as she traced the frame with her fingertip. We look happy. We were, for that moment, I agreed. Maybe that's somewhere to start. She nodded, carefully rewrapping the photo. Thank you. Not just for this, but for the job, too. I know you could have just fired me. It's a business decision, I said, though we both knew it wasn't entirely true. You have potential value to the company. Just make sure you deliver on it. After Vanessa left, I stood at my office window, looking out at the city skyline. 3 years ago, I had been devastated by my sister's deliberate exclusion, hurt by my family's lifelong pattern of diminishing my worth. Now, I owned the company my father had never believed I could understand, and my sister would be working under my leadership. But the victory didn't feel quite as I'd imagined. Instead of vindictive satisfaction, I felt something more complex, a sense of closure mixed with cautious hope. The power dynamic had shifted irrevocably, but perhaps something healthier could grow in its place. My phone buzzed with a message from my mother. Your father told me what happened with the company. We should talk. Dinner on Sunday? After a moment's hesitation, I replied, I have a business dinner Sunday. How about lunch next week instead? I can come to you. It wasn't forgiveness exactly. The patterns of a lifetime wouldn't be erased by one acquisition or one apology. But it was an opening, a willingness to explore what might be possible now that I couldn't be cropped out of the family picture anymore. 2 months later, I stood in the lobby of Walker Tech Solutions headquarters, now emblazoned with our expanded logo that incorporated elements of both companies' branding. The integration was proceeding smoothly, with the combined entity already showing improved metrics across all departments. I watched as Vanessa led a client through the space, gesturing enthusiastically as she explained our customer engagement platform. She had thrown herself into learning our systems with unexpected dedication, earning grudging respect from her initially skeptical colleagues. The relationship between us remained professional during work hours, but we had begun occasional Sunday brunches away from the office, tentative steps toward rebuilding something neither of us had fully valued before. My assistant approached, interrupting my thoughts. Ms. Walker, your parents have arrived for the tour. I nodded, smoothing my jacket unconsciously. Show them to the conference room. I'll be right there. As I walked toward the meeting, I reflected on how different this felt from the ambush at Walker Marketing months earlier. This time, I had invited my parents to see what I had built, not to gloat or seek validation, but to share a part of my life they had never bothered to understand before. My father still struggled with his diminished status, but my mother had made surprising efforts to connect, asking genuine questions about my work and apologizing, in her way, for the years of oversight. Small steps, complicated by decades of history, but steps nonetheless. I paused at the conference room door, taking a deep breath before entering. Through the glass, I could see my parents waiting, my father examining the awards displayed on the wall, my mother arranging herself nervously in her chair. They looked older somehow, less intimidating than the giants who had once defined my sense of self-worth. The company I had built, the success I had achieved, hadn't erased the past, but it had given me something more valuable than revenge. It had given me the power to define my own future, to decide for myself what family could mean going forward. I opened the door and stepped through, ready to show them exactly who I had become, a woman who could no longer be excluded from any picture that mattered. If you've ever had to fight for recognition from those who should have valued you from the start, I hope my story reminds you that success isn't just about proving others wrong, it's about proving yourself right. Sometimes the people who underestimate you give you the greatest gift of all, the determination to become someone who can no longer be ignored. Leave a comment sharing your own story of being undervalued and how you rose above it. Don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories of redemption and success against the odds. Remember, the best revenge isn't cutting people out of your life, it's becoming the person they can't help but include.